We are delighted to present this 13-part webinar series beginning today, and it will be continuing till the 19th of January. And there are 4 themes that we'll be covering in this webinar series to be addressed by nationally acclaimed academicians, professionals, and researchers. So this 4-part topic includes COVID-19 and reporting. It includes child rights. It includes climate change, and it includes development journalism. Today we begin with including development journalism in the academic curriculum, and we are delighted to have 2 very distinguished speakers today. Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor K.G. Suresh from Motilal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism. We are delighted to have Professor Usha Raman, one of the senior most professors in the Department of Communication, University of Hyderabad. She's also the Vice President, the first Indian representing, at the International Association for Media and Communication Research. So she also has this designation. We have the Honorable Press Club President, a very distinguished journalist, an academician of high repute as well, and the spirit behind this show. So we are delighted to have him with us. We are also delighted to have Ms. Sucharita Bardhan, the communication specialist, UNICEF Kolkata office, West Bengal office. So yeah, she's from Kolkata field office. And we're delighted to have all these people here. She is the person who conceived of this particular program and all these things, and we've had the opportunity of working with her in UNICEF Rajasthan as well. So we're delighted that this trend has continued from Rajasthan to West Bengal. Without taking much of your time, I'll invite the Honorable President, Press Club, Sri Srinivas Sur, to welcome our honorable guests.
Thank you, Dr. Umashankar Pandey. Obviously, you have introduced everyone, and you do not require any introduction, but it is my humble duty to introduce you, Professor Dr. Umashankar Pandey, as we all know, in West Bengal, not only in West Bengal, not only in India, but in the international media academics. He is quite well known as a researcher, as a media academician, and many people do not know that he started his career as a working journalist. He worked in Asian Age in Kolkata. We have worked together for a long time, and he is one of the able persons who understands the professional acumen and also the academic acumen, both. So he is there as the project director, as you all know. So with this, I would like to welcome Honorable Vice Chancellor of Motilal Chaturvedi University of Journalism, Professor K.G. Suresh, sir. Sir has been an impetus for all of us, again, our working journalists as well as the media academics. Sir travels a lot to make sure that the spirit of the media academicians and media professionals are reinforced. And Sir has also tried to bridge a gap between the academics and profession. And now he's at the helm of affairs of the largest university of journalism and mass communication. So this is something very, very welcome thing for all of us belonging to media profession as well as media academics. Sir has believed in sharing his knowledge, wisdom, experience, expertise. Physically, he has traveled a lot in India and abroad in sharing his acumen. Also in webinar series, Sir has opened our eyes that wherever you are, if there is an opportunity of sharing, Apurvo kopi vandarastava bharati vishyate bayatu vriddhimayati shayamayati sanchayat. Bayatu vriddhimay. If you give it, it increases. This is his principle. So that is why we are delighted to have him. He's our friend, philosopher, and guide, a person close to our heart. And pedagogy is his concern, as well as he knows the difficulties of the profession. And development journalism is his commitment. So there could not be any other person to begin with as an Upacharya. We believe that the Acharyas should begin, the Gurus should begin, and he is a media guru. And he is there for us and is committed to this cause for which we are doing. We are also delighted to have Professor Usha Raman here. Central India, Southern India, we don't mean virtually we can get connected. The advantage of it, and it is the expertise and experience that we pull together. This platform is pulling together this kind of resources and this kind of personalities. We get to know each other. We get an opportunity of being shared with their wisdom and knowledge. Ma'am, thank you very much and welcome. I don't know how to, I don't dare to welcome these two persons who are personally quite well known and very close to me. We have journeyed together a lot, Sucharita Bardhan and Dr. Umasankar Pandey. Uh, Sucharita's commitment for development journalism is time tested. When she worked in Sahai, an organization for children, then Rupkala Kendra, an academic institution devoted to social communication, then in the UNICEF, in her stint in John Hopkins, and then UNICEF Guwahati, Assam, and UNICEF Rajasthan, and now in West Bengal. So she has been committed towards the cause of development journalism, and she wants to see that the development journalism figures in the curriculum as well as in practice. She has made a lot of orientation and familiarization programs, not only for the cause of children, but also, yes, in particular cause of children, but in general, cause of development. And this is her commitment. And Dr. Umashankar Pandey, as we all know, young, dynamic, committed, capable person. Say anything, yes, this needs to be done. So this is a Press Club Kolkata and UNICEF West Bengal project in which UNICEF has been helping us, guiding us, and obviously supporting us. And Dr. Pandey has been spearheading this. And to talk about Press Club, yes, it is the Press Club Kolkata is the oldest press club in the entire Indian subcontinent. It was founded before independence. Our members and journalists contributed in the nationalist reporting, which was required pre-independence. And then after independence, all these socio-economic political situations, their participation, their analysis, their reporting was praiseworthy. And obviously, they have gone 1 mile extra in making social awareness in case of protest, maybe for emergency or any other things. And, the contribution of now we are celebrating the 50 years of independence of Bangladesh, where Kolkata Journalist and Press Club Kolkata in particular took a pivotal role, which is acclaimed here and there or both. So these are there, and now of late, Press Club Kolkata wants to see itself as a platform for the professional development. So regularly we organize lot of professional discourses, refreshers, familiarizations on specialized reporting on the areas where we require to strengthen our information base, knowledge base, skill base, etc. So with this commitment, we are partnered, the oldest press club in the subcontinent, partnering with the one of the finest international organizations. And we would like to, you can see, we are trying to deliver this as a finest professional delivery, like from registration to certificates and all other things. These the deliverables will be available in YouTube so that you can fall back. You will be provided with some kind of a report of the material, and we encourage and we welcome all our media friends from the media fraternity, the members of the Press Club Kolkata, and we have also gone to the members of the press clubs of various districts in West Bengal, our academic friends who are there as in the faculty in various colleges and universities, and the media students, the budding tribe. And we believe that the traditional media space may be decreasing, but the media space in social media platforms and in development sectors, in IEC sector, in ICT sector, they are increasing. So the students will get an idea, not only content, but also the platform. So with this, we welcome all of you, our resource person, esteemed resource person, and I thank you for agreeing to be here with us, and our people who are spearheading, who have been spent long time, tireless efforts have been given by Sucharita Bardhan and Dr. Mashankar Pandey. And those of you, the media academicians, media practitioners, and the media students who are joining us, because without the audience, this effort is useless. So with this, I welcome each one of you and wish that our effort, somewhere, somebody, some people are taking effort. So this effort needs to be fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Welcome everyone once again to this live webinar on development journalism in academic curriculum, pedagogy and capacities. Delighted to report that we have almost 200 participants right now, and we're expecting a lot more as we go along. I am honored to introduce Ms. Sucharita Bardhan at today's program. She is the communication specialist, UNICEF Kolkata Field Office. She is the spirit behind the show. She is the one who conceived this thing and has been backing us and has been involved with so much commitment that it inspires us to give more. And as I said, a lot of the things we've been discussing, including data journalism, has been her brainchild, and her backing has led us to this point. I'm sure her support to media and communication education and to the profession will continue in the future as well. I invite her to introduce the webinar series.
Thank you so much, Professor Uma Shankar. We call him USP, and I'm more comfortable with that. And since we have to have very open discussions, I would like to do the curtain raiser myself. I am very, very honored, privileged to be part of this webinar series, which Press Club very kindly, per courtesy, the president, who himself is part of this entire series and the initiative behind the entire effort, is here with us today. Snehashi Shur needs no introduction, but he has also been behind the initiative to have or start something of this kind in West Bengal for a long time. And many of you know that I started work in Assam with Tejpur University. That's where a lot of other professors who are not here on the panel, but I was equally privileged to have the opportunity to work with them. That's where the journey began on development communication. And we actually started deliberating on what is it that we require in terms of looking at ethical reporting on children. And for UNICEF, as you all know, UNICEF works, our mandate is to work for children and also to understand the media spaces that report on children. What quality of reporting really happens? And there were concerns for a long time, which is why we started looking at how to look at more balanced reporting. What is it that mean? What does ethical reporting really mean? And we tried to unpack it in terms of looking at evidence-based journalism, in terms of looking at what data journalism could actually mean, which USP was also referring to some time back, and also looking at how to support media and how to support journalists in trying to adopt these best practices of reporting in media, whether providing them with a database of the national findings, whether trying to look at some of the larger highlights in vernaculars, whether trying to get a kind of on-hands practice of what data journalism could mean and how to practice it. So you will be happy to know that that spirit continued, and we were able to identify two areas of work. One on development journalism, naturally for students who will branch out to become journalists, and the other for communication for social change, which we commonly know as communication for development, which also has another area of work. I continued into Rajasthan field office, and I was there until June this year. And I was very privileged to have partnered with the University of Rajasthan. Professor Bhanawat is not here today, but he will be part of the lecture series as well. And I can see Professor K.G. Suresh smiling because we've had a long journey in the University of Rajasthan, and we cut across almost 22 universities, and we were privileged to have vice chancellors, we were privileged to have professors, assistant professors, very senior media editors, bureau chiefs, and even association and other platform representatives. In all, what I can say is that we tried to look at whether what we are talking about in terms of development journalism really needs to be practiced. We assessed it from across the entire span. And the thinking was that, yes, it is. It is very much, and we are lucky to see ourselves through, because we realize in contemporary times how much important it is. And it has been very important for a long time, even in the context of social media becoming more available, accessible to people, where everybody becomes a potential news producer. What do we want to report on as far as development journalism is concerned, which is particularly for social development issues? The learning has been immense. There are two professors here from whom we would like to listen to, so I will not go into those details, but I would want to say that we had developed a kind of a curriculum and a lesson plan, a module also for practicing journalists, curriculum for postgraduate students, and for the faculty development programs. And we have new professors whom I have not worked with. I would want to seek the privilege. Professor Raman is also here today, so I would want to seek the privilege of extending this entire gamut of galaxy that we have actually, and trying to bring everybody together to kind of facilitate a formal shaping of what we have proposed to the UGC at the moment. It is there with the Committee of Higher Learning, and we would like to see it come through. And all the universities across have wanted to participate and take it up, and we are very happy that they are thinking along these lines. Recently, we've also been considering risk reporting, which we have. The pandemic has actually showed us that risk reporting is that much more important as well. The rest we will hear, but for me, I would want to think a bit more. There are some promises that you make. Now you are a believer in dreaming. Be dreaming tall. And I think that when you want to walk the path, your dreams, if you have them along the way, only then can you keep achieving each of them as milestones. I was happy that I could do my bit in Tejpur University. Dayal Chakraborty and the rest of the professors there will also be part of the lecture series here. I was very happy with the association that we could do with the University of Rajasthan. I again acknowledge Professor Sanjeev Bhanawat, and I'm extremely happy. I'm looking forward with the President's initiative that we have, and UNICEF West Bengal would like to partner with some academic institutes in West Bengal as well. We will look forward to that. Right now, the time is to hear from the people who have practiced it, who we all want to listen from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your kind words and for such a clarity of thought. Thank you again. As I said, we are delighted to have, and we are honored to have Professor K.G. Suresh with us here. We've had his support for a number of years, and it's such an honor that he is sort of the inaugural speaker. So I'll take this opportunity to have a formal introduction of Sir. He is a very, very distinguished academician and a professional as well. He is currently the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, Bhopal. He was earlier the Director General of the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, which is India's premier media training institution. He was the Senior Consulting Editor with Doordarshan News, and he has been with the Press Trust of India, PTI, and also with Asianet News Network. He was recently awarded the prestigious Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi Award for outstanding contribution to journalism by the Kendriya Hindi Sansthan, Ministry of Human Resources Development, Government of India. The cash award was 5 lakhs, just to tell you. And it will be presented by the Honorable President of India. He's also a member of the Academic Council of the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University of Satitre Film and Television Institute. He's also on the Research Committee of Indian Council of Social Science Research. He's on the Advisory Council of Delhi School of Journalism, University of Delhi, and so many other institutes. He's also a member of the Award Selection Committee and co-chair of the National Council for Science and Technology Communication, DST, Government of India. He has also served as Emeritus Professor at the Jagran Lake University and many other universities. Among the various things he did as the DGIMC was introducing the language journalism. So he introduced Marathi journalism, Malayalam journalism, and the certificate program in Urdu at the Delhi campus. And he's also set up the Department of Indian Language Journalism, apart from the Department of New Media. He's also introduced the Community Radio Empowerment and Resource Center at IMC. As consulting editor with the Doordarshan News, Professor Suresh played a very pivotal role in introducing Speed News Vartavali. Speed News and Vartavali, the world's first Sanskrit television news magazine, and then Good News India and Dotuk and so many other things. In PTI, he's served as a chief crime reporter, deputy chief reporter, special correspondent, chief political correspondent. So as we can understand, he's been on both sides of the education and the professional field. So we are waiting to hear from Professor Suresh, who was also designated the Commonwealth Youth Ambassador for Peace by Commonwealth Youth Program Asia. He was also awarded the PRSI Leadership Award, and he is also a TEDx speaker and a member of the prestigious film jury of the Indian Panorama at the International Film Festival of India. So delighted to welcome you, sir. There are so many other things that I can talk about you, but we would rather listen from you, sir. Welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Umashankar Pandey, for that warm welcome and very kind introduction. Uma, as Sucharita rightly put it, for us is USP. He is the USP of Indian media academics, the unique selling proposition. So he is the brand ambassador for Indian Media Academia across the world. Great connecting with you, Snehashish, a long-time friend, and who actively contributed to particularly the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Eastern Regional Campus, Dhenkanal. And in fact, we were planning to start the next Bangla journalism program when my tenure ended. I'm sure if and when we started, it would be a roaring success under his guidance. And Sucharita, well, it's been a long journey indeed. So many fellowships, so many seminars, so many curriculum development programs. And I must compliment all of you for organizing this wonderful interaction. I would call it an interactive session because I see a lot many, media educators who are there. Professor Usha Raman, well-known media academician from Hyderabad. And I see, that press clubs are generally known as watering holes. But that you are carving out a niche even in media academics is something that I think that every press club in the country should emulate. Because generally we media professionals generally don't take much interest in media academics. And I think that this is one reason that there is a disconnect between industry and academia. There is a gap, and that is because generally only after retirement or when media professionals are jobless that they look forward to interacting with the then they start calling you up and say that, look, do you have some space to accommodate me? So rather than a passion to be a media educator, and I was really fortunate that right from the word go, even during my hardcore professional days, I used to teach at Indian Institute of Mass Communication and Makhanlal Chaturvedi, and of course Delhi University. So the topic that you have chosen today is I must say that is a very important topic. And given the fact that this thing is, for me, it's all the more important because we are in the process of, in the next coming days, training our own faculty in public health communication in collaboration with UNICEF, something which I did at IIMC also. In fact, Sucharita would be knowing that Anil Gulati is here, and together we are, now not only going to train our own faculty across all campuses of the Makhanlal University, but also we are going to train journalists across Madhya Pradesh, in public health communication. Because I was fortunate to be part of the UNICEF initiative when we designed India's first public health communication program, which has become so relevant today, particularly in the aftermath of the COVID-19. It's become so important today. But the million-dollar question I would like to ask is that we do talk about the importance of development journalism in academic curricula. But how important is development journalism for media itself? I think that is something that we need to look at. I know Snehashi Sur would be able to talk on this because the platform that he represents is perhaps the only platform which does some kind of development journalism, even if it is a one-sided kind of approach. As a public broadcaster, in fact, the other day I was, overseeing a research, PhD research, and the entire study was by somebody from Doordarshan Bhopal on a comparative study between private television channels and Doordarshan with regard to development journalism. So I said that, well, on the one hand, there is only Doordarshan which talks generally about development journalism. But on the other hand, the problem is that there is no feedback mechanism. It is doing a lot of messaging, no doubt about it. It is creating awareness. But then what is happening at the ground level, we don't get a real-time feedback on what is happening, how the programs are being implemented, are they reaching the beneficiaries concerned. These issues are certainly not taken into account because then that may amount to some kind of criticism of the government. And so it is generally avoided. So this has been the approach for so long. So we need to look at why for the private media, this is not target audience. Because the development journalism, the belief at least is that it is rural centric, whereas development journalism is also about slum dwellers. Development journalism is also about, development journalism is also about urban areas. Development journalism is also about, small towns. And so development journalism is not just about rural areas. That is something, it's about the development of the people at large. It's about the development of the people who are disadvantaged, people who are downtrodden, people who are underprivileged, people who are not able to assert their rights, people maybe due to illiteracy, lack of awareness. It could be any reason, but we need to understand that. So they think that, well, we don't have readers, we don't have viewers who are interested in this. And secondly, development journalism, practicing development journalism involves costs. Let us accept it. It means sending out reporters to the grassroots level or paying good reportage, having good reporters at the grassroots level. But the stringers are poorly paid. Most of the stringers are very poorly paid. Single-handedly, they cater to so many papers. And I think for them, the priority is their own livelihood rather than, engaging in development journalism activities. Yet, to the extent possible, the journalists, the media fraternity is doing its best. But today we have a market-driven media. Let us accept that. Today, it is the TRP ratings that matter. It is the circulation that matters. It is the target audience that matters. And the issue is that whether they are at all interested in rural journalism. Sensationalism sells, and it's today less of journalism and more of multiple windows and heated debates, which doesn't result in, which doesn't yield much results so far as development journalism is concerned. So you take a very superficial trivia has become the top priority today. So you see a lot of people who are now engaging in, very, very superficial kind of reporting, wherein, what is happening at the grassroots level, nobody seems to be bothered. It is all event driven. So today you have, so I'm sure some of you would certainly say that, well, today the farmers are there everywhere in every media channel. Well, that is because there is an event. It's the farmers are protesting. So media is bothered about, or media is covering it, because if the farmer was protesting somewhere in some remote area, perhaps this would not happen, because the national capital is under siege. So that is why they are bothered. As I've always said, waterlogging in upmarket Gurgaon or in near Delhi or somewhere in Mumbai is topmost priority compared to floods in Assam or Bihar. So the priorities are totally different. What are the priorities of the media? Is development journalism part of the? So we need to understand this, because I'm raising this issue because often students ask me, that sir, ye jaan ke kya karenge? Matlab media, what do we do? I mean, after listening to this, you are saying goody things, but where is it happening at the grassroots? At the ground level, at ground zero. In media, do they care? But having said all these things, why I am flagging these issues is that we need to understand, that whether media is engaging in. So where is it that media is doing it? Is it that it's totally not there? Yes. If you are looking at the so-called mainstream media, then yes, it is negligent. In fact, I don't need to, reiterate what P. Sainath has said in Everyone Loves a Good Drought about how a fashion week in Mumbai is far more important for accredited journalists than the farmer suicides in Vidarbha. So I don't need to talk more on that, because this has been extensively documented, whether in terms of coverage of agriculture, coverage of rural areas, the minimum, the marginal coverage that is being given. It is, in single digit, the percentage, and even lesser than 5%. In fact, perhaps the Hindu was the only newspaper which had a rural affairs editor in Mr. Sainath. The others seem to be least bothered about the rural areas. Yes, the district editions of the papers are certainly carrying, because that is their target audience to that extent only. But the so-called national papers, the national media, is hardly bothered about development journalism issues, unless there is some environmental issue of great concern or something like that. So you see very less development journalism. In fact, what is interesting is that, in institutions like Indian Institute of Mass Communication, the development journalism course, people come from, African countries, Latin American countries, to study development journalism. Exclusive course in development journalism for people from Afro-Asian countries. I mean, they come at the expense of Ministry of External Affairs, Indian taxpayer-funded, initiatives, and they go back to their countries and they are doing a wonderful job. But our own students, for them, it is just one chapter at the most, or one unit of, their curriculum. Now, this is really sad, that you have an entire course for foreign journalists on development journalism, whereas, for your own students, you just have a chapter or so. This is something that is not given adequate importance. And for me, development journalism also includes public health communication. For me, it's also about, that we conducted so many workshops. The health journalists seem to be the least aware of even basic issues concerning the common man, including, whether it is malnutrition, or it is about unsafe abortions. You take any issues which the rural India is grappling with, you hardly have any. It's more about lifestyle diseases, and I'm not, undermining the importance of coverage of lifestyle diseases, but the fact remains that there are far more basic issues which rural areas are grappling with, which people are grappling with. The very, unfortunate, miserable condition of primary health care centers in so many, of our cities and states, in our districts. It's so bad. But then they don't, only when there is an epidemic breaking out, or when there are some children who are dying of, a lot of children dying in one go, then only the focus shifts. But after that, again, we forget the entire thing. There are no follow-ups a year after or after that, but you just cover something and some suspensions, some magisterial inquiries, some probe committees are set up, and that's it. And then we call it a day and we move to the next story. The follow-up mechanism is not there, unfortunately. It's only till the time it hogs headlines, but beyond that, you hardly hear about it. Now, this is happening, which is very unfortunate. So we need to really look at, but having said so, there are also the alternative media, which is looking into these issues, which we should not be ignoring, because there is a growing, you see so many initiatives, whether it is, I can even cite names, I have no hesitation. Like there are Gaon Connection by, say, Nilesh Mishra, former Reuters journalist, Shubhranshu Chaudhary, who is using Bluetooth radio, using your Bluetooth in the tribal Maoist affected areas of Chhattisgarh. You have Khabar Lehriya in the Bundelkhand areas. You have video volunteers. I can name n number of such initiatives which are being taken by and which are cloud funded, and of course people like Sainath have Pari, which is doing a wonderful job so far as documenting the rural life is concerned. That's also happening. But is it enough? So far as our academic curriculum is concerned, don't we need to give them an exposure? So I will just cite a couple of examples only for the sake of illustration how we are doing it. One, after I've joined this place, in September, one in the back, in the district, Rewa district of Madhya Pradesh, where I have a campus, we are introducing rural journalism, an exclusive rural journalism course in the backward areas for the benefit of students from across the country we have a beautiful campus coming up there. And anybody aspiring to study rural areas in the rural background, not sitting in Delhi, not sitting in Mumbai or Kolkata, but in the actual hinterland, in the actual, backward regions, if somebody wants to study rural journalism, we are starting that course. Second, in our own new campus coming up on the outskirts of Bhopal, we have a huge campus which is coming up, 55 acres. And that campus, we are introducing community radio in a big way. And the whole idea is that, so community radio, again, of course, I'm passionate about it. I talk about it. Even in my introduction, it was said that I set up the Community Radio Empowerment and Resource Center. So community radio is something that is the potential we are yet to harness, effectively. Community radio, when it was envisaged, we had planned to set up 4,000 community radio stations across the country 2 decades back. But even in 2020, we are looking at hardly 200-300, functional community radio stations. What is the reason for this? Why can't we make it sustainable? Why don't we train people in that? There are so many NGOs, there are so many universities, institutions in the rural areas. Why they are not able to, take it up? So I think that it's very important that, we need to, train our students. This has to be made an integral part. Some institutions like IIMC have their own community radio stations, but again, what is happening is that the students, how much of student involvement is there? Because unless you involve the students in the production, I know of commercial radio, stations run by private media institutions where hardly there is any student there, almost made it commercial, So I think that it's very important that the student is, it's not film, songs and music that a community radio station is all about. It's about education, it's about health, it's about media literacy, it's about so many issues which are not being taken up by community radio stations. So I believe that community radio is something. So first, public health communication has to be an integral part of the development journalism academic curricula. Second, community radio has to be a very, very important part of this initiative that is, we need to talk about it. We are not letting our students go into the rural areas. That's very important. Now, in this entire COVID scenario, post-COVID scenario, my students in the mass communication department, they're not attending physical classes, but I'm happy to share with you that they have, from the villages, from the rural areas, they have already made 200 videos, with regard to issues in the, so the entire focus has to be now shift from, theoretical foundations have to be there, but the practical hands-on approach, we will have to involve more, because student retention is very less. The attention spans have come down like anything. So I have found that when you engage the students in a big way, of course they have to do their readings, they have to understand the basic conceptual framework, they will have to understand, but what they are interested is hands-on approach. Can we give them more and more exposure? Can we make assignments in such a way that we actually ensure that they go down to the to the grassroots and they are able to do some real good work there. This has to be, somehow there is a confusion, which I keep telling my students, my teachers, that development journalism is not about social work. No, we are not engaging. Some people say, oh, social work, it's about social work. No, sorry, it's not social work. It's something basic that you and I need to do. I mean, we are basically teaching them to report, evidence-based reporting, which Sucharita talked about. It's about the fundamentals of journalism. It's nothing new. Public health communication is also, when we talk about that, it's about the fundamentals of journalism. That means truth, accuracy in terms of facts, and objectivity. That's important. So the accuracy part is very important. The objectivity part has to be important. So this is not about activism. This is about factivism. It's about promoting facts, as against myths, as against, it's so often, there is this entire concept when you talk about development journalism, activist journalism. I somehow have a problem with this entire concept, activist journalism. No, we are teaching them to be factivist journalists, report the facts from the ground, what's happening. That itself is, you don't need to become an activist, but once you become an activist, you cease to be objective, you cease to be unbiased, you cease to be, so I have a problem with the term of journalists being activists. Either you are an activist or you are a journalist. You cannot be both. As a professional, you have to look at all aspects. An activist only looks at one aspect. As a journalist, I'm training him or her to be a rounded personality who is going to look at all aspects. This multi-dimensional approach rather than a unidimensional approach has to be understood. So often we tend to focus on the activism part of development journalism. This is important that, that development journalism takes into account, the importance of facts, the importance of data. Data journalism, again, Sucharita talked about. Yes, data is of course, I don't need to repeat the cliche term that data is the new oil. Today, are we talking about, for me, RTI is an integral part of development journalism. You cannot detach RTI from development journalism, right to information. There are some newspapers which are still utilizing, newspapers like the Indian Express, which are still utilizing RTI in a big way. But I believe that, RTI needs to be, we need to encourage our students to actually not just teach them about the, Right to Information Act, but actually encourage them to do some stories, even as students, to file RTIs, to get information of various projects. How many universities are doing? I travel as, Snehazi's put it, 15 days in a month, I am living out of my suitcase. But The fact is that in most of the universities, I cross-check with my colleagues, and I ask them that how many RTI has your students filed. The only RTI is the students' file is against their own university and department. Now, that is not RTI. I mean, of course, they have a right to do that. I'm not questioning that, but I think that they should be trained to, in their respective cities, in the civic bodies that they are, based out of, whether it is in Kolkata, in Mumbai, in Delhi, they should be, doing this. I cannot think of development journalism minus RTI, and that is a right that I think we should be exercising. Our students should be told about it. Sucharita, please warn me when when I'm in the flow, I forget the time. So how many more minutes? 5 minutes more have I got? Because I want to listen to Dr. Raman also.
Please, sir, carry on, sir. You have time.
I've got about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, you have.
Okay, thank you. This is something that we need to factor in. There are, we don't talk about case studies. I believe that it is very important that case studies, is hardly there in our, the entire legal education is based on case studies, but somehow in media pedagogy, in our curriculum, we don't have case studies. I think it's very important that, we have case studies, which we should be collecting about remarkable work done by some journalists at the grassroots level, which we need to highlight. We need to document them. We need to, talk about. This is something that is, very important. I think that there should be a sincere initiative, even by Press Club, UNICEF. UNICEF can do it with regard to public health communication and other, because they have been actively engaged right from the Pulse Polio program to now Indradhanush, and subsequently, the routine immunization, and now the COVID awareness. So I'm sure they have many case studies which can be shared with media educators, with media education institutions, wherein remarkable work, remarkable impact journalism is something, again, I mean, of course, it's part of case studies, but still I would look at it as a different segment that we need to involve. We need to make it an integral part of media education in our academic syllabus, our curriculum. We need to have impact journalism as something that we need to talk about, wherein we collect stories which we are not talking about, except teachers from from the industry who share their own personal experiences in the classroom. We are not documenting and sharing how journalism has, and believe me, it will attract more, brighter minds to the journalism field. It will actually encourage them to, if we showcase, if we project such cases before our students, it will actually inspire them to do more such stories. How many of us are actually, doing it? Last but not the least, very important is research. You cannot think of development journalism without research, and today research, I often say that research has been replaced by Google search, and that's a reality. That today they think that everything and anything and everything can be found in the Google, and what comes in the Google is reliable, trustworthy. I think that is a big myth that we need to bust. It's important that, I'm sure, the USP is the right person to talk about it. There are this entire dynamics of search engine optimization and stuff like that, which actually, kind of, I would call it a connivance, a conspiracy, wherein, you are not given the real picture at all. So how to, even how to research, engage in research through Google search is also another lesson that need to be taught. There are people like, Umashankar Pandey, Professor Umesh Arya, who have done extensive work in this field, on actually finding the, the entire, how data surfing has to be done, and how you have to distinguish separate the wheat from the chaff, that is something that we need to really talk about, because research is an area where we in Indian media, we have lacked. As a practicing journalist, I have found that I have seen transnational copies, whether it is Reuters, AP, AFP. I find that the importance given to background reporting, it's very important. They give so good backgrounders with every copy. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, when we used to, those days where we used to have a lot of, I mean, it continues to this day. I mean, whenever there used to be an Indo-Pak something, I remember that every story that talked about India-Pak will always give a backgrounder about the issues at hand. I mean, those days I remember there used to be these contentious projects called Baglihar, Tulbul, between the two countries. And I mean, our papers would just report that it is proposed to start secretary level talks on the Tulbul issue between India and Pakistan. This has been decided at a meeting so and so. Now, where on earth is Tulbul? And what is Tulbul? Now, what is Baglihar? I mean, where on earth is Baglihar? I mean, who is talking? Who is, giving this information? Who is supposed to give this information? So there is absolutely no focus on, backgrounders. I mean, we think that the reader is the wisest person under the sun. He's an antaryami and he can, find out, on himself. I mean, this is really unfortunate. I should look at every reader as a new reader who is reading that news item for the first time in his life. I mean, I scan through so many pages every day in the newspapers. Many news items I generally ignore, but sometimes my eyes, I get attracted by the headline and I go there for the first time. How am I expected to know what all happened in the, in that story, in the backdrop of that story in the years gone by? I do not know. So I need to be told. Every reader need to be told. So I think that it is very important that, so research is very important, even from a communication perspective. When these students go to, why I am repeatedly focusing on the industry is because at the end of the day, these students are going to the industry. You see, let's prepare them for the industry. And when we are talking about preparing them for the industry, I think that we are not giving adequate importance to research. So when we talk about development journalism, any development story, whether it is data, research, this is important. Without this, they cannot actually go into the, I mean, can you do a story on, say Odisha, in the current scenario in the development sector in Odisha without going back to the KBK days? Can you? I mean, I cannot think of that. You need to study the entire, how it all started, the Koraput and, what all the Kalahandi, you need to talk about those days. You cannot think of development journalism with regard to Odisha without going into the history. So it is very important that we need to go into the history. We need to dig deep. Are we teaching our students to dig deep? To understand the dynamics of development journalism. This is something that we need to know. So friends, I think that I have taken more time than what was given to me. I discussed with Uma before, joining how much time I have. For me, so to put it in a nutshell, I would say the focus in development journalism has to be on community media. I won't call it community radio alone. I would say community media, which would include community newspapers, community radio, community television, and community digital platforms. So community media has to be an integral part. Research has to be an integral part. Data journalism has to be an integral part. Right to information has to be an integral part. Without these, being an integral part of our academic curricula, if we are expecting development journalism to reignite interest in development journalism, I think that we would be expecting too much. We will have to have a standardization. Again, at the cost of repetition, I would say that what is impacting our industry is that that our entire academia is that unlike other disciplines, we don't have a standardized curriculum. I am not talking about a uniform curriculum. I'm talking about standardization. Certain basic things have to be there in every curriculum across the country. This year, we are celebrating the centenary of media education in India. I think this is the right time that we all come together. We all share our thoughts. And I'm happy that many conferences are being planned.
I think for some reason, Professor Suresh has yeah, it's come back. Yeah. You just went offline, sir. But I guess he was at the end of his speech. Are you online, sir?
I think he is. Maybe USB.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. Okay.
Yes, sir. You're back, sir.
It got disconnected automatically. I don't know how. Anyway, this happened. This is the disconnect between the industry and so thank you so much. I believe that we need to sit together, and I really once again compliment the UNICEF and the Press Club Kolkata for arranging this kind of I'm hopeful that the deliberations at this conclave would lead to better results, and we all would be able to agree on some common framework for all universities, wherein we are able to I think enhance development journalism in this country in terms of quality and in terms of I believe that more and more people engaging in development journalism. On that note, once again, my thanks to all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this, your erudite speech, sir. And we were so much awed by your speech that we forgot that we were online. It's only when we went offline for a second, we thought that, okay, this is an online webinar. And we were almost, transported there to your fabulous office in Bhopal. And, listening to you is, we can go on. And it's always, there's so much to, learn from your wide experience, both as an academician, and a professional, and also an administrator, because you are one person who not only just thinks about things, but you also implement it with speed. So thank you again, sir. Your presence is so much of a positivity. I'm delighted to report that we've had over 250 participants today. And for the benefit of participants, I'm just informing that we are keeping a track of every message on our chat box. So right from Dipanjali Tripathi to Dipanita Dotto, Manshi Dhami, Somnath Das, Devangshu Mondal, Champa Devi, Mamata Oja, Brajman Sahu, Akash Sharma, Pushpak Bhattacharya, Gayatri Rai, Babita Rani Ghosh, Shoma Sarkar, Dr. Yogesh Kumar Gupta, H. Halyang Chakma, Mukesh Kumar Chaurase, Pravad Mishro, Gursimran Kaur, Atula Chauhan, Priya Jha, Diksha Pandey, Shottobroto Paul, Vinit Kumar, Pushpak Bhattacharya, Priyanka Sarkar, Rima Bohra, Rajneesh Jha, Monica Verma, Dr. Monica Verma, Dr. Tanushri Mukherjee, Rima Bohra, Rama Sharma, then Aparajita Bandopadhyay, Isha Tyagi, Dr. Sudhir Bhatkar, Shubhangi Chaudhary, Paul Cherutopuram, Neha Rani. Please forgive me for the wrong pronunciation. Shruti Datta Bonik, Tripti Mishra, Sarthak Moghe, Roshni Yadav, Mansi Tyagi, Yukti Bhutani, Riju Paul, Juhita Maji, Boishaki Mishra, Sarthak Moghe, Erum Fatma Hossain, Rupanjana Paul, Anamika Jha, Riju Paul, Yukta Bhutani, Akanksha Shukla, Rahul Khadia, Nandini Chakravorty, Nilanjan Shaha, Anita Parihar, Rima Bohra, Priyanki Kalita, Rakiba Khanam, and Jusika Muni. We are keeping track of all the questions we've asked, and we'll come back to our distinguished resource persons in a moment's time. And I'm extremely honored to introduce Professor Usha Raman at today's deliberation, and we are delighted to have her at the inaugural session. She's a professor at the Department of Communication, University of Hyderabad, and her research and teaching interests include digital culture, feminist media studies, journalism pedagogy, and science and health communication. Before joining academics, she served as the head of communications at the LV Prasad Eye Institute in Hyderabad, and was the advocacy and communications consultant to the International Agency for Prevention of Blindness. She's worked on several collaborative projects with UNICEF in the area of social and behavioral change communication, and was part of the University of Hyderabad team that coordinated the UNICEF Global C4D workshops in 2016 and 2019. She has a number of peer-reviewed research publications. She has many of her research scholars are doing very well, and she's a very, very distinguished academician across the country. And I tell her often that, she is one of the spearheads of the Hyderabad School of communication that is there in India. So they are, doing so well on that. She is a very prolific writer as well. Her writing has appeared in the Caravan, in the Indian Express, in the Wire, and she's a very regular columnist at the Hindu. She's done her PhD from the University of Georgia in the US. And as I always proudly proclaim, she is the first professor representing an Indian university to be the vice president of the preeminent global organization, International Association for Media and Communication Research. Ma'am, we are delighted and honored to have you here today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, USP. Thank you, Mr. Sur and Sucharita. It's always a little bit scary to follow somebody like Professor Suresh. But let me see if I can, complement what he said. Maybe add a few perspectives of my own. So if you'll give me a minute, I'll just share my screen. I don't like PowerPoints as a rule, but I find that sometimes when you're interacting online, it helps to have that structure. And while I really appreciated Professor Suresh's, very impassioned talk, and I think you've covered pretty much most of what I myself would like to say, but still, my own 2 bits or 2 paisa worth. So let me just get my screen up. Yeah. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
I cannot.
Yes.
Yeah. Now the problem is I'm now staring at my screen, so I cannot see everyone else. But
Yes.
Hopefully there will be interaction after this. So kind of taking off from where Professor Suresh left off. He did, at length talk about the whole disconnect between industry and training of academics. And what I would like to address is, how does one who is located within academia address this kind of schism, address the divide that exists? And as a university department, of course, we're not just a training center, right? We're also a research center, and which I think offers us some unique opportunities in building what we would like to call reflective practitioners. So I'm trying to address both sides of this coin. Both people who go into development communication as communicators, so doing the kind of work that Sucharita herself does within UNICEF and many other NGOs, but also those who end up as journalists and are writing about social change. So it's kind of a double, a double role that we're trying to fulfill as academics. And what we're seeing now is that, we've been talking about development journalism ever since journalism training started in India. But now, especially in the past year, I think, we're confronted with the fact that there is really a need for young professionals who understand what covering development means, and also what it means to work in the social sector as communication professionals. So, clearly, 70 years down the line, we're still talking about development as a challenge in India, and the roadblocks to it, the sort of fraught conditions within which development occurs. And so we need people who can understand it as a process, understand how their role can make a difference within it. And then on the other hand, there's been this explosive growth in the media sector. And I call it a fraught business because, as Professor Suresh explained, there is this focus on media as a business. So how do you then bring in this sensitivity to reporting issues that perhaps are not going to feed that business? We've also had a mushrooming of media schools and schools that kind of focus on skills. A lot of schools that are just into the business of producing people who can go out there and report. But very often these young people don't have an understanding of context. So, without an understanding of context, how do you report, especially issues of development and social change? And these media schools, I think, have often sidelined theory-driven media and communication education. And I think it's important not to privilege either one or the other, but to see how they can work together. And so what we're confronted with is an understanding that there is a need for better informed, reflective media practitioners, and also a media system that is welcoming of such media practitioners. So, as academics, we cannot really do very much to reform media from the outside. But I think what we can do is try and reform it from the inside through the kind of human resources that we supply to the industry. So for us as a university department, what we are committed to is building journalists who can sensitively and empathetically cover issues of development and social change, and producing communicators who understand what it takes to work in the social sector. So, if I'm thinking just about today, and all of these are images that all of us now, are familiar with. So we're looking at, the farmers' protest or issues of migrants right after the lockdown, or now, vaccine hesitancy. And all of these, they are development stories, and they're also stories that require a certain kind of communication if you're working within the social change sector. So I'm sure Sucharita, as located as she is within UNICEF, there is this gearing up right now. How are we going to tackle vaccine hesitancy? How are we going to ensure that the communication flow is going to be as smooth, if not smoother, than the flow of vaccines to those who need it? So I think, more than ever, we are confronted with issues that require not only the ability to write well and, produce good images, but also the sensitivity that explores the multiple layers of those stories. And I think, as Professor Suresh again said, these stories are told with in-depth research, they're told with attention to evidence, with an understanding of their historicity and so on. And I think that same sensitivity also applies to people who become development communicators in the social sector. So clearly there's a capacity gap. And yesterday when I was looking at, I just did a Google search, not research, just a Google search on, capacity development courses for journalists covering COVID. And there was some 14,000 hits on Google. So clearly that reflects the fact that there's a gap. Even journalists who've been covering health policy for years are finding themselves challenged by this pandemic. How do we understand epidemiology when epidemiologists are themselves trying to understand the pandemic? How do we keep up with the kind of knowledge that is being generated today? And do it in a way that is not about sensationalism, is not about breaking news, but is about the complexities of these issues. So there clearly is a capacity gap in terms of, finding people who can hit the ground running. And that is in terms of journalism. And then when you're looking at the social sector, even large organizations like UNICEF, UNDP, ILO, are finding it difficult to find young people who can fulfill these jobs with a nuanced intersectional understanding of the social sector. So then this means that as university departments, we have we have quite a big task, if we are to do both these things. We do want to produce good journalists for the industry, and we want to produce young people who can join the social sector as development communicators. So how then do we address this challenge? And I think, many of the points that were made both by Sucharita and by Professor Suresh are very well taken. We do need standardization. We do need to rethink how we approach teaching. But how do we do this? And I think it's a debate that we need to maybe put to rest. Do we, and we can only do this through discussion and, through seminars like this where we raise the issues and then perhaps find a forum where we can resolve them. So do we do, C4D as a standalone, program, or should it be integrated into an existing master's program? So Tezpur University, for instance, has a master's in C4D. But we don't have a full-fledged C4D master's, but we do have a very strong C4D focus within our MA program. So I guess one could debate the merits of one or the other and see, which one seems to work better. But the way we have done it, and I can only speak to our own sense of, success or not success in terms of how we've done it. But I think it's important also to consider the salability of a program, and that often becomes the deciding factor. But then what should go into such programs? Clearly, we need people who have strong media skills, no argument with that. They should be able to write well, speak well, do good stories, do the kind of reportage that makes good stories. But they also need to have at least a certain level of domain understanding in development studies, health, education, all of these things that underpin what we consider development. And then we come to, do we have the faculty skill sets to create such professionals? That's something we have to think about. So then not only do we have to build capacity in terms of students, but we also have to build faculty capacity. And I think, this suggestion that came up towards the end of Professor Suresh's talk about using the case study method, I think that's really a brilliant idea. And maybe we need to then think about how we can get faculty to, what's the pedagogic skill they need in order to teach using a case study method. So ultimately what we want to do is we want to get students to think in a way that they do good development communication and do good development journalism. So, the title that I used, empathy and engagement, I think those are really key, right? It's not just about knowledge, but it's about a sensitivity to these issues. So this is a challenge, but I think it can only be met if we commit ourselves to the idea that these are the kinds of students that we want to produce. So, very quickly, I'll just talk briefly about how we do it at UOH. And so we fall into the second category of departments. That is, we have a strong orientation towards social change communication and development communication. In fact, when we started as a department, it was very clear that that was almost the singular focus. But as the industry evolved and as students' demands evolved, we realized that we do also have to address other needs of the industry, not just social change and development. Yet, we hope that even if students go out and become sports writers, they are sensitive to the kind of social change issues that even exist within, say, sports or within fashion or within business. So that's really our broad philosophy. And so we're constantly looking to see whether there are opportunities for students not only to learn from the course curricula, but also from the things that we do as faculty. So, when we run a workshop in C4D, we make sure that we have student assistants who sit in, who help us, who talk to us through the workshop process. So in a kind of indirect way, they are imbibing some of the things that we would like them to learn. We do several projects in, that are collaborative with UNICEF, also with other organizations. For instance, I work very closely with the George Institute for Global Health. And I usually try and find students to help me with that so that we can transfer some of the learnings from the project to our own students. Professor Suresh mentioned community media, and we have a very active chair who always has a couple of student assistants working on their projects. And our community radio station, I'm proud to say, is very much student run. And yes, they do a fair amount of music and dance, but they also do a fair amount of on-the-ground reporting. And the community in our case is the community of the university and the surrounding communities. So that's outside of coursework. Within coursework, again, we have a very strong social change focus. The outputs of their work tend to focus on social justice issues. We do this through a community media course, through our reporting courses, and through the health communication course, which I run. So this kind of encapsulates my own pedagogic philosophy. So, yes, we have an intention. Our intention is, how do we produce sensitive, empathetic individuals who will cover social justice issues and also be able to work in the social sector? How do we then translate that intention into curriculum design? How do we then also translate it into delivery? Because it's not, especially when we're talking about empathy and engagement with issues, it's not something that you can just learn from a textbook, but how do we sort of embody those principles by our own engagement with these issues? And then, this space between implementation and learning, often there is something that happens, which I would like to call curriculum entropy. There's always this little loss between what we would like to achieve and what is actually achieved. And can we address that gap? And I think that is addressed by by experiences that we can design, whether it is through case studies or whether by getting them to go out and report in the communities that they live in. But that's the way in which, experience can probably lead to internalization and ultimately application in the field. So it's not science, it's a combination of science and art, but definitely it's possible for us to do. So finally, I'd just like to talk very briefly about the challenges and the opportunities. So there is, of course, the lure of the corporate sector, which gives them good salaries. So every year we find some of our brightest students end up joining places like Oracle and Google and, the IT sector as communication professionals. But then there's also a significant number who end up going into the social sector or stay with journalism. But then when they go into journalism, a large number go into the mainstream media because of the excitement and the visibility that it offers. But we're also finding that there are students who prefer to go into, let's say, organizations like the News Minute or Dalit Media Watch or News Laundry or, what we call alternative media. So that tends to be the challenge, right? It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for the students, which we must recognize. And then the last set is the opportunities. And I think, I've called it the lure of altruism. And I think there is still a very strong streak among our young people to want to make a difference. So in a class of 40 or 50 students, there will be at least 15 to 18 people who have come into our course because they want to make a difference. So it's up to us to make sure that they find the opportunities, they gain the strength or the skills to do something with that motivation. They want to work in an industry or in a space that gives them a complex set of responsibilities, not just, you go, you do one job and you come out. I think, this moment, I like the way that the New York Times podcast, when they launched the daily podcast, they said, this moment demands an explanation and we are here to give it. And I think this moment demands more than the usual. And as departments, we should be up to the task of providing what it takes for students to do more than the usual. And this is a picture from our backyard, from the university backyard. We have this beautiful campus, and so it's a lot of space for students to reflect, to understand that the world is more than just their classroom, and we hope that that will give them the motivation. So that's it from me, and again, that's the department. So I will stop there. I'll stop sharing my screen, and yes, back to you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation. And there are, as I said, lots and lots of questions. So I wouldn't, I won't be able to take all the questions. We have about 8 to 10 minutes left. Probably we'll try and extend it to another 10 minutes. So we'll. So what I'll do is I'll just, read out some of these questions, and I'll leave it to either Professor Suresh or Professor Raman to take it up. And after that, we'll have final observations from Shushrita ma'am, and then we'll have the formal vote of thanks from Snehashishur sir. So I'll just read out some of the questions that have come in there. So the first one was about, there are many. So as I said, I'm not reading all of them. So there was one by Pushpak Bhattacharya. He speaks about how to bring back ethics in Indian journalism, especially in a time when news is not balanced and is only targeting a particular section of the audience. Dipanjali Tripathi feels that Kolkata is lagging behind Delhi and Mumbai in journalism. What can we do about that? Then there's another question on television debates. So, and still another about whether journalists should follow the path of neutrality today. Whether there is, this question is by Neha Rani, whether it's important to take sides, of what we consider is right. So we'll start off with these questions. So any one of you can take it up, and then we'll go on to another set of questions. So it's basically about ethics and content and neutrality and
Okay. USP, may I?
Yeah, sure, sir. Please.
Okay. Well, so far as ethics is a question that everybody asks, and I think that yes, you see, the media is an integral part of the society. I mean, if we are expecting that media also reflects, media is a mirror to the society. So if there is an erosion in ethical and moral values in the society, it will find a reflection in the media also. Media is not something which is above the society, or they come from this society only. Media persons, they come from lower middle class backgrounds, coming from agricultural, rural backgrounds, urban backgrounds, and I think that they come from the same education system. Yet I believe that a majority of the journalists even today practice certain ethics. But then let me tell you that even if they want to, they are unable to do a lot of things, because the media has been so much corporatized today that they have very little say. The journalist has hardly any say, in that. I mean, I used to belong to the generation when we had regular jobs. I never subscribed to, in fact, I left the moment they introduced contract system, but today there is a Damocles sword hanging over their heads, and they are expected to toe the line. And if they don't, they are out, So I think that this is a reality, harsh reality. So what you see as a violation of ethics is more about the corporate practices, wherein it's a profit-driven media, where the objective is no more, arousing the social consciousness or creating awareness or informing or educating. It's a purely profit-driven, media. So I believe that, this is a reality. So what is the solution? The solution has to come from the people only. They will have to support, a subscription model of media. Unless they do that, if they can buy, popcorn for $400 in a multiplex, they may as well learn to, shell out a few rupees for independent media. Independent media is the only option in the current scenario, wherein you need to support, media houses through crowdfunding and crowdfunding. Unless you do that, or support community media initiatives, to expect media to follow ethics, uncompromising ethics, would be a tall order. I mean, honestly, I think that society must also introspect what kind of media they want. They better support such media houses.
Yeah, if I could just jump in and add to that, I think the early days of the internet and, these first 25 years of the internet, unfortunately, has gotten this generation used to most things free in terms of information. So I find that even those, of my generation, for instance, who are still willing to pay for subscriptions and so on, you find that that's not happening so much with younger people, because many of them have gotten used to getting much of their information and even entertainment free. So I think it will be interesting to see how, as these young people then understand the implications of what free information means in terms of ethics and so on. That's the point. Maybe we'll come to a turning point in the business models themselves. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely, I agree that it has to be, subscription-driven or a community-driven model rather than, a business corporate model. So, but when that tipping point will come, we've seen it happen with the New York Times, for instance, right? But are we able to reach that level of journalism in order to produce our audiences, to convince our audiences that, it's worthwhile to pay that much money to get the newspaper is a big question.
Thank you so much again, Professor Suresh and Professor Raman. There are, as I said, lots and lots of thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. So over 50 of them, and I've taken all their names and we've recorded it, and we'll make sure that all these thank yous reach to Professor Suresh and Professor Raman after this webinar. There are again, questions on how do students, prepare for development journalism so that they can create their own outlet for news and opinion. So if you can take that up, Professor Suresh first and then Professor Raman.
Yeah, Yashvi, I believe that it is very important that, I will go back to the good old principle. They should read extensively, you see. Read as much as they can, and just don't read the very, very trivia, kind of stuff. They should, read editorials. They should read feature articles. They should not be just reading news. In fact, there's so much. And second, I insist that even students who are learning in English language, studying in English language, should read the language press. Whether it is Bangla, whether it is, Tamil, whether it is Telugu, Malayalam, I think that it's or Hindi. I think it's very important that they should read the language press, which is still even today more in touch with ground realities. I would say that. So I think it's very important that they should read even if they are reading one English paper, ensure they should read one language press. That's very important. Second, they should have their internships. They should not be looking at internships in some plush studios every time. They should be going for ground level internship. They should be attached to NGOs. They should be working at the grassroots level. Let's not just internship means going to some media house, being there, bringing coffee for their seniors. That should not be what internship, and at the end of the day, get a certificate. Let's have redefined internship in our media schools. We need to tell them that internship is not necessarily about understanding media alone, understanding society, understanding grassroots level what is happening. That has to be, that is media internship all about. So without understanding that, what is the point in understanding media? So I think that internships will have to be redefined. Let them go out, meet as many people as possible. I mean, these are just initial suggestions. The rest, though, Professor Raman has also said that, unless at the end of the day, she has raised a very valid point. I really appreciate that. TOTs are very important. The training of trainers. Unless, the trainers, the teachers are themselves trained to handle such a sensitive issue, I don't think by, merely reading from the book, they need, and I would encourage, and I can only have some expectations from Sucharita here, that, UNICEF can do something in this regard, to have TOT programs wherein, we teach. And today online has enabled us to do that, across the country. So there are no boundaries today. So I think that we can do that. That's it from my side.
Yeah, I would only add that, one has to have a deep interest in society and in people. And stories are only told good stories can only be told if they reflect that interest. And students too often, I think, are not willing to invest the time that it takes to unearth those stories. And so, maybe, not to, even within our assignments, if we can make it possible for them to engage, let's say, over 2 months to do a really good feature, rather than giving them lots of 200-word, 300-word assignments. Instead, if we say, okay, understand this issue, produce, 2 stories and a podcast, take 8 weeks, 10 weeks to do it. Maybe we need to build in the patience, create opportunities for them to understand what it means to tell good stories. Because I think development journalism has suffered from boring storytelling, or storytelling which is not interesting. And it's not because the stories are not interesting. It's because the people who tell them don't have that interest in the issue, sufficient interest in the issues. So I don't know if that's a clear answer, but there's no shortcut. You just have to know the field, be genuinely interested to tell good stories.
So I'll take the last question. I'm clubbing 4 questions together once again, and after that we'll go to Sucharita and Snyasi sir. There's one by Nandini Chakraborty. She says that with the rise in social media, we witnessed a significant rise in activist journalism. So does that make the fundamentals of development journalism suffer? Then Deepa Rai talks about, the low trust of for journalists in many countries. So why is it so? And Priyanki Kalita, she talks about, the political influence on journalism, and does it impede journalists' role as the fourth estate? And then there is Rima Bora, who talks about even on the, farmers issue, there are, clear divisions. People are still not very clear about, what is good for them and not. So how do you, tackle these questions of agenda-driven, communication at a certain level? Professor Suresh again first, and then Professor Raman.
Well, I understand the concerns, but the fact is that, let's not blame the, journalists. I mean, to a great extent. I'm not saying that all journalists are apolitical, or I also believe that every sensible, not just sensitive, sensible individual will certainly have a political stance. So nothing wrong in that. Only thing is that my voting preferences should not reflect in my copy. That is my only this thing. Now this is corporatized media. So what the corporate wants, the media house will follow. That's happening. That's a reality. So whether the journalist working in that likes it or not, he may agree or not, but that is the editorial line. You see, even when we used to work before all this huge big corporatization, editorial line was confined to the editorial page, the editorial per se, and the editorial write-ups, not the news. The news was always a sacred space. But today that sacred space has been violated, so that is the concern. So I believe that the disillusionment is due to that. I think that it is in the larger interest of media's credibility itself, that the media houses, the owners, the bodies like Editors Guild, they should all sit together and look at it. Otherwise, I think that this is going to impact media's own credibility, because the questions that have come up only reflect the sentiments of the people at large. This is a reality. So far as the question of activism and is concerned, I would only like to say, you see, when I talked about that, I'm not saying by any chance that somebody should not be passionate about an issue. My only thing is that sometimes when you become an activist, you become so passionate about it that you turn blind eye to the other concerns. For example, I give this example of the animal activists. animal rights activists. Now, animal rights activists, often say, for example, there's stray dog menace. So they will talk about the dog certainly, but they forget the human aspect of it, about little children being bitten, the rabies being spread. These are also aspects which need to be taken into account. But for the animal rights activists, the only concern would be the safety of the animal. So when I say that, a journalist, activist can do it, nothing wrong in that. But when you are a journalist, you should be looking at all the dimensions, all the facets, all the aspects of a particular issue. That is all. Otherwise, though, I'm also for, you see, without that passion, you cannot take up any issue. That passion has to be there. And certainly, yes, the people who are downtrodden, the people who are, this is what the Gandhian talisman is also about. That when you are in doubt, only look at how the decision that you are going to take is going to impact the last man. That has to be the talisman even for journalists. So that is there.
And again, the only thing I would add is, activist journalism doesn't actually serve the issue, because then what you end up doing is only playing to that filter bubble that believes in your point of view. So if one wants to really change, achieve some sort of a clear-minded change, you have to consider all sides of an issue and present them. And of course, if one of them is more persuasive, the data will show that. But it's not your position as a journalist to say that this is the better position. It's the role of the data or the evidence to make that case. But then again, I think there are some issues like climate change or child pornography where one should not try and achieve a false equivalence just by saying, there's another side to this, because there are some issues where there is no other side. But then in those issues, it's even more important to base your arguments or your stories on evidence.
Thank you so much, Professor Raman and Professor Suresh, for your wonderful deliberations. And what better start can we think of, than this? Thank you again, for everything, all your support and all your erudite exposition here. Just two housekeeping information for our participants before I come back to our panel here. There is a feedback link on the chat box, so make sure you fill up the feedback link properly, because that will automatically generate a certificate of participation for you. So please make sure that you do that carefully, and please check your spam box also, because we've seen at times, since it's auto-generated, it might land up in the spam box of the email that you have shared. So please make sure that you do that. The announcement for 11th January, in 2 days' time, on Friday, we have another session at 11 a.m. All our sessions will be at 11 a.m. That's on understanding cyberbullying and online safety for children. So if you haven't registered, please do that. We'll also send you registration information to everyone who's present here. And then there's another one on 15th December, Tuesday. That's on practicing development journalism in the mainstream media, scope and challenges. I would request our panelists to be there again if you are available. All our sessions will be put up on YouTube in an hour's time. So in an hour's time, it will be there on YouTube, and we'll share the link with everybody so that this is available for researchers and scholars and students even after the session. So again, I'm honored to invite Sucharita Bardhan, Communication Specialist, UNICEF Kolkata Field Office, for her final thoughts.
Thank you very much, USP. Thank you very much, Professor KG Suresh and Professor Usha Raman. Thank you also, Snehashish Shur, for starting off with the context within which we had planned this. From the deliberation that happened, there is so much to take back. It's very difficult to kind of summarize, and I don't want to intend to do it for all the students and for us as well. The documented proceedings will help us to look back at most of the recommendations, some of the thoughts that you have provided us. I would like to mention just a couple of things. I'm going to be using the word factivist journalism or factivist journalists from now onwards, Professor Suresh. That's going to pick up, I don't know whether Professor Suresh can hear, that is really going to pick up now. And because we've been talking about data journalism and the need for reporting based on evidences. I can quote an incident in one of the main leading newspapers or English dailies of Assam in those days, which reported on an entire issue on children without having access to the report itself, because we didn't have the report ourselves. So we checked back with the editor, and the editor tried to get back to the reporter. He was very good, actually. He came back with the report, and they found he came back with no actually report of that kind. So evidence-based reporting is very crucial, very critical. And I just, because I'm mentioning this now, I also want to mention that ethics and media ethics is a large issue. I think someday we would like to see how much we want to bring in for the discourses for our students, even for us as practicing people who work with media, and of course for the professionals or professors. But my very humble take on this is, if we are not sensationalizing, if we are reporting on the facts, if we are using sufficient evidences backed by data, if we are, the headlines or the title is matches with the body content, because many times you have sensational lines and then actually there is nothing much more there. And we've had, through our fellowship experiences, which we know about in UNICEF, we are very particular about that when we are reporting on children, where is the consent that we take? And where is our understanding of the issues that we perceive for them? And I think these are some basic ethics that we really definitely need to understand. What is confidentiality? I have people telling me that the face of the child has been blurred, but the school that she's standing in front of hasn't. And so people are able to actually find out the location. And we talk about survivors as victims. We don't talk about the perpetrators of crime. We don't talk about the gaps where the services have failed, who have been responsible, but also talk about how whatever achievement has been possible, who are the people who make that possible. In terms of people, I mean stakeholders, who have actually contributed to reduce the IMR from whatever percentage or point to a lower point. And where are the gaps? Where does Rajasthan and West Bengal match in terms of the national average? And why isn't something happening in West Bengal or Bihar, which is possible in Madhya Pradesh, for example? And I think if we ask these questions, and these are not very difficult questions for us, it is not difficult to do a comparison of data, which is why I think there is this I'm very, very interested, and I think USP has also taken on data journalism big time. This is going to be something which is very important. But having said that, I would also talk about something that Professor Usha Raman mentioned, and something that even Professor Suresh mentioned in different parlances. One is about storytelling. If we have to make appealing reportages, whatever we do, even news, we need to make it appealing so that people want to read about it. I've heard reporters telling me that what is it in sanitation, and ye hamara Swachh Bharat bahut ho gaya hai, abhi to matlab we are not able to report anymore. But I have also had bureau chiefs saying that we need to understand what and how to make it appealing. So there is something which is very strong in terms of storytelling, which catches the attention or captivates your audience. We have to be able to understand what is storytelling all about. And I'm very interested in this entire recommendation that Professor Suresh made about case studies. I think going forward in the entire partnerships that we may have with universities, and if we can have all our media representatives, scholars, professors, practitioners whom we've been in touch with for some time, let us try to see how to take this forward. What is the way to kind of maybe provide to professors so that they can build it into their curriculum? And we'll try to see from UNICEF when we are working in West Bengal how we can start on that. Empathy is a big word for me personally also. social development is not a very glamorous beat, and there are no specific reporters to talk about development specifically. We know that, but we also know that there are some. I've had my experience lately, Professor Suresh. You might be very interested to know the after the fellowships, we had a mentorship that we did because we realized that at the district level we needed hand holding. And initially, the district journalists were not sure what they were actually going to acquire in terms of skills. And when they got a feeling, a hang of how data can be used along with other evidences and the storytelling skills, they were so excited. They said, we've actually an entire different vista has opened up. So I do understand and appreciate that there is a requirement for in-house media training as well. And that is equally important as much as we do training with our students. And there is a report which I will share with you all later, where he actually made it possible for a slight policy change in the district in terms of a certain area. So it is not that things are not happening. It is the intent to make it happen. And I will, I think, I don't know whether Rakesh Goswami is present here, but he's been a very positive champion of development journalism. And he says that you may not have 5 such reports that are telling the story, but you can have 2. And if you have 2 spaces where your editor is, you can appeal to your editor, that can acquire a national and an international flavor as well. So I think there is a lot left to explore in terms of how to kind of enhance the quality of what we call as stories which are otherwise very dry, which are not glamorous. Let's turn around and see as far as the media space is concerned. As far as the curriculum and pedagogy is concerned, I think FDPs or TOTs, as has been mentioned, is something that we have spoken about earlier, and we will request all your support after we finish the entire 13-part series. We would like to get in touch with you once again to see what is possible. Thank you very much. A lot of thoughts for us, a lot of work and homework for me actually, and I'm glad that I will have to do it. As you know that I am extremely passionate about this, and I would like to look forward to take this onward again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sucharita Bardhan, for your wonderful thoughts, and you're always such a big support for these activities for media academicians, professionals, students, researchers, and all. So this is really a wonderful series to start with. Before I invite our press club president for the formal vote of thanks, I will take this opportunity to thank 2 people behind the show who've been working behind the scenes. Our webinar coordinator Shreya Deb and our IT coordinator Devayan Bhaduri for such a fabulous job. Big thumbs up to you both. You've been fabulous. And I have already been reported that people have started receiving their certificates. So that's how I can use that word. That's how efficient we've been. So thank you again, for this. And we'll see you back on 11th at the same time, as I said. And I hand it over to Snehashishur, the Honorable Press Club, Kolkata President.
Thank you, USP. Yes, it is a time for a formal vote of thanks, but I edit out the word formal. Whatever I say, it's from the core of my heart. It's from the commitment of being in the profession of around 4 decades. Well, this is not a vote of thanks. It's not a TOT, not a VOT. It is sharing a gratitude, working together. I know that for an honorable vice chancellor, it is very difficult, and that too for such a big university, to devote so much of time. But we all know Professor Suresh's commitment to the cause, and that's why we have got him for so long with so much of commitment, so much of lucid but very strong deliberations. Professor Usha Raman, we are thankful to you that you have been with us and you have made it very clear, the agenda, that what we are looking for and what should we go ahead with. I think the initial day with the 2 very senior professors, including 1 honorable vice chancellor, has been a blessing for all of us. And we are sure that we are going to have them in our board together. And it is a commitment from the Press Club Kolkata also, as you all know, that we have been doing lot of professional development programs, skill development programs in legal reporting, in language reporting in Hindi and Urdu. And Professor Suresh will be happy that we have a connect with Makhanlal Chaturvedi University, where Professor Upasani, your predecessor, had come, predecessor to predecessor, and predecessor Professor Sanjay Dwivedi had also come. One has given the welcome address, another had given the valedictory address, and it was wonderful to have a journalism workshop on Hindi journalism at a place which has given birth to first Hindi newspaper Uttan Matad. And the university has committed for some kind of endowment for this pioneer, the person who established Hindi journalism, Professor Shukla, Mr. Shukla, the editor of Uttan Matad, the first editor. So I look forward to continue, and I'll share with, I know even before Professor Suresh says anything, I'll share with my fellow members that the relation will continue for professional development with Makhanlal Chaturvedi University and Press Club Kolkata, sir. We look forward it, because Hindi is a language which is a link language, which is a language of people, which is understood by all. And we have seen you that you belong to a part of the country, and you are very conversant in the link language, because this is the language which people understand and communicate. We are communicators, we'll have to go for a common denominator. So that is one part. And we have also done one for Urdu journalism with Maulana Azad Manu,
Yes.
the Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. So, ma'am, we'll be happy to know that it's from Hyderabad, from Bhopal. Press Club Kolkata is connected. It was connected physically, but now virtually. We look forward to those. And today's deliberation did not confine itself to only pedagogy and pedagogical development. It created a new platform with everybody together for the cause of development. The academicians, the practitioners, and the budding scribes, or I would say the students will actually go for ICT and IEC components, because these are the areas, the digital platforms and alternative media. We not only cannot ignore, but we'll have to give more thrust on this. Alternative media, media of my own space I'll create at a startup, and then that would become a successful. So for the cause, I thank not only both of you, and we look forward that we'll continue to have your support. I have no words to thank Sucharita ma'am, because of the fact that apart from wherever we work, like public service broadcasting is a passion for all of us. Professor Suresh knows. Like development is a passion for Sucharita. She has worked all through in development sector in various organizations, and she wants to see something happening, something result oriented, and we are there in the journey to transcend this theories which we evolve, the practices will evolve, and get it into a practice. We assure you, ma'am, that we'll be together in the journey because of the cause of development. USP, as you said, under your leadership, it is extremely professional, that people have not only engaged but also have started getting certificates. You can understand that starting from the initial mail registration, posters, everything, we are trying to do it as professionally as possible, because once we work with UNICEF, it has to be international standard, and we try to do that professionalism. So we look forward a lot of things we have gathered. I have also taken notes. Sucharita, USP, all have taken notes. There will be press releases, there will be summaries, there will be reports out of it. We want to make it seriously. Somewhere somebody is spending time and money, and we are committed, and we learn from you seniors and all my colleagues who have made it possible, that we'll have to do it serious. We'll have to evolve some result to see. With this, we thank you, and we wish all the participants, because without you, it is meaningless. So we request you to come on all the days and to learn, because this, the virtual connectivity gives us a platform of having the knowledge and expertise of people who are experts but located in various countries. So that is some advantage that we want to make use of it. So please do come, because without you, it is not successful. Let us hope that all 13 episodes will be very fruitful. I'm personally sorry. There were power cuts and there were technical glitches. All of us will have it. But that's why we would like to put it in YouTube. We'll like to share the presentation so that a repository of resources is created. We want your blessings. We want your support, blessings of the experts, blessings, support from the participants, and encouragement from our colleagues who are there together. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. We are grateful.
Thank you again, everybody, for such your wonderful participation, and having 250 participants in mid-December when people have been, flooded with webinars, dime a day. I mean, for 9 months there have been webinars, and we were slightly apprehensive about, getting, this kind of participation, but we're so glad and encouraged with participation of different kinds of people. I've had my friend Professor Manoj Das from Sikkim University, Professor Rakesh Goswami from IAMC, Professor Priyanka Sharkar, Professor Tanushri, so many people, talking on WhatsApp about how good this has been. And it's so wonderful to, listen to all these people. We'd love to have all these students and everybody back again. We've shared the registration link for the next webinar in the chat box. We'll share it with you as well. And Professor Suresh, the wonderful communicator he's already put up his speech on the Facebook live. So and there has been more than 300 views already. So it's there. So anybody who wants to have a look at that. I will again, take an opportunity to thank our webinar creative team as well. Shekhar Bajpai and team, they've done a wonderful job, and they've been working round the clock with us for cutting every T and dotting every I, and it's been wonderful experience for all of us. So as we all say, well begun is half done. So I think there's just 50% more work to do for the next 12 webinars. So thank you again, Professor Suresh and Professor Raman, for your generous support as always.
Thank you. And it was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much again, sir. And thank you, Shuchrita ma'am, for all the support. Thank you, Snehashi sir.
Thank you.
Snehashi sir has been my teacher. So as you can understand, a professional with this academic acumen is a rare combination. And there already have been at least 2 academicians who asked for his number and they want to invite him for future webinars. So I've shared with them. Thank you again.
No one can reach the record of Professor Suresh and USP in attending the webinar, sir. If there is a Guinness Book, or we will keep a record, sir. We will come out with the numbers, the outcome numbers, sir. We learn a lot from individuals, sir. How do you make time? Thank you, sir. Thank you. It is an encouragement for us.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this positivity. I take your leave, and let's return on 11th and 15th and 18th and 21st and 23rd and 28th and 30th December and 5 more in January. Thank you again, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.